Hello, Year 9. Today we are going to continue with our work on approaching unseen poems and analysing poems that we might never have read before. We're going to step away a little bit from protest poetry, so poetry of sort of criticism and exposing the ills of society. And we're going to have a look at a poem that links to our lockdown, our isolation and social distancing that's been in place for quite a while now. The first task I'd like you to do, and I'd like you to pause the video after I've explained it, is to just write down the title and the date and to note down some reasons why you think somebody might write a poem. So what might be their purpose or their intention behind writing a poem? Okay, pause the video now and have a go at that task. Okay, hopefully I've got you back, and let's just review some of my ideas that I came up with, so some reasons that I think people write poetry. You might have something different or something additional, and that's absolutely fine. So the first reason that I think people write poetry is to express emotions, and that is a really wide range of emotions, from love to anger, and this is supported by a really, really famous poet called Robert Frost, who said that poetry is when an emotion has found its thought and the thought has found words. And so it's that process of turning feelings and ideas and emotions into a poem on a page. That's not the only reason, though. I think some people might write poems to criticise or to protest, and of course that's what we've been covering so far since half term. They might want to raise awareness of something they feel is important, or to educate through their poetry, to record memories or events. This is a reason why I think a lot of poets write their poetry, and that's to explore key questions or ideas about how we live our lives and our existence as human beings. People might write poems to give advice to others or to support those in need. And some poems, quite simply, are written to entertain or to interest their readers. Some poems will include a lot of these purposes and reasons, whereas some might only be written for one or two of these reasons. So during lockdown then, quite a few people have written poems, have turned to poetry to express their emotions, or to sort of explore this new way of living that we've been faced with. When we perhaps write a diary, it's the sort of same process maybe. It's to explore what we're feeling and the situation at a time. And poetry helps us to do that in the same way at times. Today we're going to have a look at a sixth form student's poem. Their teacher is also a well-known poet, which is lucky, and they've come together as a class and contributed to a collection of poems that relate to us having to stay at home, and they've explored their emotions and their feelings through that poetry writing. So what I'd like you to do now is to just pay really careful attention to the poem as I read it through, and then you're going to pause the video, read the poem through yourself once more, and just to note down some of the ideas and the feelings that you think the speaker is trying to convey about their new way of living. So first let's read the poem through. Fork. I've often been told I shovel my food, like I might never eat again. But when we're stuck at home, we cling to meals as punctuation. That and the garden. I shovel soil, wash it compulsively down with a metal watering can, with the handle like my mug. We've been mothballed, put in the box in the attic, time's very own basement. My house feels small. My house feels small until I try to find things in it. 2 days in, I ask the houseplants if they want to be named. Now Spiky wants to be renamed. His promising sharp spears have curved into silk brown veins like tired fingers. Soon I'll be eating soup with a trowel, as I've lost all the spoons, digging the lawn with a dinner fork, as I've lost the spade. Okay, so this student, this poet, has conveyed some really interesting ideas about what life is like for lots and lots of people during isolation, during that time of having to stay at home and potentially away from family and friends. So what I'd like you to do now is pause the video, read the poem through once more on your own, and to just note down maybe 4 or 5 ideas that you think they're trying to convey about what life is like during isolation. Okay, hopefully you've got some ideas written down now, some of your own thoughts about what the poem is about. Before I share some of my thoughts, we're just going to delve a little bit deeper into the poet's ideas and the methods that they use to convey those ideas. So this is the process that we've been following so far during our approach to unseen poetry. We've read the poem, we've thought about some of the ideas and the feelings that the poet is trying to convey, and now we're moving on to the how, the methods that they use to convey those ideas. So I'd like to note down task 3 and then have a go at A, B, C and D in full sentences and using evidence, so quotes or references to the poem, and some analysis when possible. It doesn't have to be too detailed in terms of your analysis at this stage until you get to task D, which is the response to the question, how does the poet present ideas about being isolated at home because of the coronavirus? And what I'm going to do is have a go at answering that question using a paragraph, just to give you an idea of the sort of thing that I've been thinking about and maybe what a successful paragraph might look like. So let's have a look at that question once more, just remind ourselves what we need to be responding to, and then just share some of the ideas that we've had. How does the poet present ideas about being isolated at home? So ideas about being isolated at home. So what's happening when we're isolated? How are we responding to it? How does the poet present some ideas about that? And then that how is the methods, like, the tone they're using, the language they're using, how are they getting those feelings across to us as readers? I picked up on the second stanza in particular here. It's not something I've asked about in questions A, B or C, something slightly different, and that's absolutely fine for this question. And I've picked up on her compulsively washing down the soil. Now, to do something compulsively almost means to do it in a really with an overpowering urge to do it, perhaps not very consciously or in full control of it. And I think what they're trying to say is that sometimes during this period of isolation or lockdown, we do things, we do jobs, or we get into a routine and we do things over and over again, and they're not sometimes very varied in terms of the things that we're doing, because we've got a limited sort of maybe access to space or to things that we can access. Maybe the jobs that we do become a bit compulsive, so a bit sort of obsessive or overpowering, and we maybe do it because we want a sense of purpose and to get ourselves into a bit of a routine perhaps. But certainly I think I want to explore that when I'm answering this question. So I'm first of all going to put some of those ideas that I've just had about that second stanza into a clear point. I'm going to write about what the poet is telling us about being isolated. And I think the poet is trying to suggest that living in lockdown or isolation can lead to maybe a lack of control over our actions, sort of full control, conscious control over what we are doing. I'm just going to explain that a little bit more before I move on to my evidence, to my how. The tasks we undertake, sometimes repetitively, during periods of isolation, might even feel like they are beginning to control us. So rather than having conscious control over our actions and being in charge of our actions and doing varied and interesting tasks, we might under isolation find ourselves doing the same things over and over again and being controlled by those actions. And that's what I think personally the writer's trying to say in her second stanza. So how is she saying that then? So where's that evidence that I'm bringing in? So I'm going to pick up on the visual image of the speaker compulsively washing the soil down. Now, note that my evidence is just one word. I've embedded that into my sentence, but I'm gonna sort of take that apart now and really analyse what it suggests. And it suggests, I think, that she has an overpowering need to do this job. Maybe to give her a sense of purpose. Even if she has done it many times before. And I'm just going to offer an alternative bit of analysis here, because she also says that as she's doing it, the watering can reminds her of her mug, and we know that a mug of tea can often provide some warmth and comfort. So I'm just going to offer an alternative additional bit of analysis here. So perhaps, as the simile comparing the watering can to the mug suggests, again, just one word quote, just, you know, I'm picking up on the method, I am referencing, I'm using that evidence, but I don't have to write the whole line out. The simile comparing the watering can to the mug suggests she finds comfort in doing this. However, just going back to my original point and my original bit of evidence, that word compulsively, it does seem an action that she does obsessively and no longer controls fully. Maybe a feeling that lots of people experience during isolation. Okay, so that's my pair paragraph, my what, how, why paragraph. So I've talked about my clear points, answering that question, an idea about what happens to us during lockdown. I've evidenced it with my quotes, I've analysed it, and I've talked about maybe why that poet has done it, the writer's intention. Let's go back to this screen then, so that you can just pause it there and have a go at your own paragraph when you get to D. Of course, let's submit any work when we've finished, but also if you find the time, you might like to write your own poem that's, you know, is written in response to this new way of living that we find ourselves in. And I'd be really, really interested to read any poems that you compile. Okay, thank you very much, Year 9. As ever, if you have any questions or problems, just leave me a comment on Show My Homework or email my school email address. Thank you very much.